President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. The floor will again be given to the prosecution to continue posing questions to this witness. However, before we hand over the floor, the Chamber would like to make an observation, in particular for the International Defense Council for Noon Chea. Please stand. Due to the matter arising this morning, before the lunch break, regarding your request to the Chamber for Noon Chea to observe the proceeding remotely, the Chamber would like to inform you that the room equipped with the audio-visual means, although it is not the same as being directly in the courtroom, it is appropriate and sufficient for the accused to follow the proceeding, and that he is in a position to communicate with the counsel, and vice versa. The room, which has been prepared and equipped with the audio-visual means, has already been examined by all the lawyers, and there has been no objection to the arrangement of the audio-visual equipment which the ECCC has put in place. In the case of the client of the counsel, as raised by the counsel this morning, which does not have any grounds to support such a request, and as a defense counsel, the issue between you and your client is their own issue, and you have to deal with it and fulfill your duty and obligation as a counsel appropriately. And whatever you raise, you shall have grounds for that request or submission. This is to avoid being put a request or submission without any ground. And if any judges of the bench would like to add to what I said, please proceed. Judge Cartwright, you may proceed.
Thank you, President. Just to summarize, the facilities in the holding cell are available to enable the accused, any accused, to participate in more informal circumstances than in the courtroom. They have been inspected and approved by all parties. If, however, they are not serving their purpose, it is the responsibility of counsel for the particular accused to draw that to the Chamber's attention when it happens and not make a general comment in court. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Your Honours. If I may just make a point of clarification, I was not criticizing in any way, excuse me, the facilities. I've seen the facilities. They're more than adequate. What I was saying, for the record, is that in reality, due to those concerns that I mentioned this morning, our client is not actually, actively participating in the proceedings, without any reference to the technical capabilities of these facilities that you've been discussing. So perhaps my point was missed as it often is, and perhaps that's my fault for not making it very clear. Let me make it clear now. I have no problem with those facilities. You are correct. We've checked them out. We've all seen them. They're perfectly fine. The point I was trying to make is that our client, because of those health conditions I mentioned, is not down there actively following the proceedings. That's the clarification I would like to make for the record. I don't want to waste any more time on this. I thought it was very clear this morning.
What was clear to the Chamber was that you placed the responsibility in some very vague way on the court or the Chamber itself. The responsibility is yours to raise this issue if your client at any point is unable to participate. Thank you. And I think the President does not want any more discussion on this matter, as we too do not wish to waste any more time. Thank you.
Thank you.
The President, thank you, Judge Cartwright. The Chamber would also like to inform the parties and the public that the Chamber will not hold any proceeding tomorrow. We will conclude this afternoon and resume on Monday next week. The floor is now handed to the prosecution to continue posing questions to this witness. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon. We were talking about the date of 17 April 1975 when we broke for lunch. Can you tell the court how you learned that Phnom Penh had been liberated on that date?
Answer. At that time, Son Sen went to Pol Pot's place, and I learned about it at that time. Also, there was a big radio at our location, and we could listen to any communications throughout all the battlefields. So we know when a particular spearhead advanced to a particular location.
Tell us a little bit more about this radio that allowed you to listen to communications. Whose communications were you able to listen to through this radio? Were these communications of the CPK military?
Answer. Usually there was a radio communication through the headquarters. So which battlefield they reach or advance to, that information would be reported through the headquarters. For example, when the Tam Mok or Son Sen reach a particular target, so such a report through that radio communication was regular, and it was reported throughout the vicinity around Phnom Penh. That communication radio was a particular type. It was called C46 model, and we seized it from the Udong, and it could receive or intercept all the radio communications.
And for how long a period had this radio communication device being used, either at the Saduk Tao office or at the B5 office? How long did you have that ability to listen to the radio communications?
Answer that a radio communication device was constantly on. It is like 24 hours on.
Just to clarify, my question was also, how long had you been in possession of this radio device? Is it something you indicated you seized it at Udong? Is this something that you had been... restart the question. Is this a device that had been in use at either B5 or the other offices in that area since the capture of Udong?
Answer. Prior to that, we had a Chinese-made 2-watt radio device. I did not know how it was obtained. We also have a C25 radio device, but when we capture Udong, we capture that C46 radio device and another bigger capacity radio device from Udong as well.
Thank you. Going back to, again, the date of 17 April 1975, after you and the other people learned that Phnom Penh had been captured, were you given any assignments in order to get ready to move into Phnom Penh? And if you were, what were you asked to do?
Answer. After the liberation of Phnom Penh, as I stated this morning, I entered Phnom Penh on the 19th together with the Son Sen to Phnom Penh. And on the 20th, everyone went to Phnom Penh. So all the targets or spearhead entered Phnom Penh, including Pol Pot, on that day.
What was the reason that you went with Son Sen one day ahead of the other leaders to go into Phnom Penh before them?
Answer. I did not know the actual reason, but from that office I was assigned to go ahead and to go with Son Sen, because he said everybody would go the next day. So I went as I was assigned. I went together with Son Sen.
Were there other people who went with you in addition to you and Son Sen?
Answer. There were not just the two of us. Tam Mok also went, and so did Koi Thun, Von Wade, Pol Pot also went.
Can you tell the chamber what you saw on your trip to Phnom Penh and what you saw when you arrived at the city on the 19th of April?
Answer. On the 19th, I entered through National Road number 4 from the junction of Tunnel to Tung. And first I saw the scene at Po Chin Tong airport. I saw some planes. And then I arrived at the stadium. After that, I went to the Royal Palace. And next, I went to the Munivong Bridge. And from there, I went to Chiroi Jongva Bridge. And actually, near that bridge, there was the French embassy. I saw actually people basically left the city already, but I still saw a handful of people. But many of them were already on road out, en route as I saw at National Road number 4. There were many of them. And I also saw dead bodies along the road. There were many dead bodies along the road. And some of the corpses were already decomposed. And after we left the river bank in the afternoon, we returned to our location. And Son Sen reported that basically our forces controlled the city, and then that the leaders could actually arrive or enter the city. So then the leaders could leave on the 20th. So a lot of people actually left that office on the 20th. And when everybody from other spearheads arrived, we actually gathered at the railway station, which was a meeting point.
When you say that you saw many dead bodies on the road, where is it? Was this on National Road 4 or some other location where you saw the dead bodies?
Answer. From the junction of Bai Chan along National Road number 4, I saw dead bodies, and also at the junction of National Road number 3 and number 4, I saw dead bodies as well. I also saw dead bodies at the Po Chin Tong airport. There were also a few dead bodies as well at the stadium. And when I asked about the dead bodies to Son Sen, he said that in some places when there were fierce resistance, we had to put them down. So those who resisted us, we had to put them down. And at that time, soldiers, there were plenty of soldiers at every spearhead. I refer to the 19th and the 20th of April. So all the military commanders were at all those assigned spearhead.
The corpses that you saw at these locations, were they civilians, were they soldiers, or were they both?
Answer. Mainly they were soldiers, since I noticed the helmet they used.
And on the next day, which leaders came into Phnom Penh on the 20th and met with you at the railway station?
Response. I already indicated that each commander of each battlefield came together. Both the heads of divisions, regiments, and battalions all came together.
Did those battalion commanders, battlefield commanders, did they come with Pol Pot?
Response. Everyone who was engaged in the battlefield had to come all together.
What I want to ask you and have you clarify is which of the leaders arrived and met you at the Phnom Penh railway station on the 20th? Can you tell us the group of leaders that came and based themselves at the railway station on that date?
Response. At the train station, it was the location where Son Sen wanted people to come and meet, so his people came to that place. And at the location on National Road number 5, there were also heads of divisions who came to meet together, received by Khoi Thun. I did not see Nuon Chia at that location yet. I only noted that there were heads of battlefields from each battlefield from the zones. There were people included Khoi Thun, Sao Phum, Won Wait, Cheng On, and Tamok. So all the commanders, the committees of the divisions of the surrounding battlefields and cadres came to meet.
At what time did Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, and Kusem Pan arrive at the railway station? Was that also on the 20th of April, or did they not arrive until a later date?
Response. Nuon Chea came later, perhaps on the 21st of April, I believe. And other people kept coming on National Road number 5 when I entered Phnom Penh on National Road number 4. We had to cross the Prek Dam ferry crossing.
Do you remember when Pol Pot and Khieu Samphan arrived? Did they arrive with this other group of military commanders, or did they travel separately from them?
Response. At that time, Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan, their trip was arranged by Pang, and they came at a later date.
How long were the party leaders located or based at the railway station after they all arrived in Phnom Penh?
Response. At the train station, we had remained there for less than a week before we departed.
And what was your assignment? What were you assigned to do during that week period, that 1 week period that the leaders were at the Phnom Penh railway station?
Response. I was assigned to guard the complex, the surrounding complex, days and nights, and I had to remain there because security was a primary concern, and I had to focus on providing security protection for the people there.
When did Ieng Sary arrive in Phnom Penh?
Response. Ieng Sary arrived in Phnom Penh after the liberation, a week or maybe after that.
Is it correct? Did he arrive after all the other leaders had already arrived at the train station?
Response. Yes, it is correct. He arrived the latest because he was abroad and had to land at the Po Chun Tong airport and came to the location.
And when Ieng Sary arrived in Phnom Penh, did he also stay at the railway station with the other leaders?
Response. At that time, we relocated, we moved from the train station to the Ministry of Commerce at that time. And it is now the place called the General Staff location, and it was the place where we stayed after the train station.
And do you remember whether when Ing Siri arrived, you were still at the train station, or whether you had already moved on to the Ministry of Commerce, or do you not remember when exactly he arrived?
Response. I don't remember what happened between this period, but I remember that at the former Ministry of Commerce, when I went there, I saw him with other people.
And how long were the leaders based at the ministry, or the former Ministry of Commerce? How long were they there?
Response. They were there for about a fortnight.
Can you describe for us a little bit what Pol Pot, Noon Chea, Khieu Samphan, Ing Sari, and the other leaders were doing during the period that they were based at the railway station and the Ministry of Commerce? Can you tell us a little bit about what was going on during that time period?
Response. I saw them working at the train station and at the former Ministry of Commerce. They met and had meetings. They met a lot. They met days and nights. And they kept meeting people at the battlefields.
In English, it was translated as they kept meeting people at the battlefields. Did you mean that they were meeting people, military commanders from the battlefield, or were they going, leaving their base at the train station and the Ministry of Commerce to have meetings outside those locations?
Response. What I was saying was that they worked at the train station and commanders of each battlefield had to remain in their respective battlefield, but they had to come and meet at the place. For example, the former Ministry of Commerce. Sometimes when other people had other prior commitment, only 2 or 3 people would convene the meeting, and they would meet without having all people together in each meeting. The President, Co-Prosecutor, could you please hold on? Counsel Canavas is on his feet. He may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Your Honors, and everyone in and around the courtroom. I didn't object to the last question, though I thought it was, aside from being compound, it was unfair. He talked about, the gentleman has indicated that Mr. Ingsri was not at the train station. Then, very cleverly, the question was Mr. Ingsri and the others at the train station and at the Ministry of Commerce, what they were doing and whether they were meeting the they and what have you. What troubles me is the manner in which the questions are framed. We're not getting clear answers. So if we're going to talk about what happened when they were at the train station, who was there, what happened, who they meet, then move to the commerce. If there were meetings, who was at the meetings, what were these meetings about? But they and the military, I understand the prosecution would like to lump everybody in, doing everything together, but there may be some nuances here that need to be clarified for the record. And I'm sure that the prosecutor is very skillful and artful, and he can do so if he wishes to. Thank you.
I'm not sure I understand the objection. I mean, if Mr. Carnivus wishes to pursue nuances in that, he can. The witness testified he was not certain whether Ing Suri arrived while they were still at the train station or after they had moved to the Ministry of Commerce. This was a very short period of time. Therefore, there's simply no reason to break it apart in the way he suggests, but he is certainly welcome to examine the witness on those points if he wishes.
The President, International Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed with your questions.
Partly in response to what Ing Suri's counsel has raised, you've talked about that you saw leaders meeting with military commanders who would come in. Who were the leaders from the center who you saw meeting with military commanders? Which people did you see participating in this?
At what time? When? This is important.
Mr. President, if I can get an answer to this question, then I can follow up with other questions such as when, where, that type of thing. Being interrupted is not helping the process here.
The President, indeed, Co-Prosecutor, you may continue putting your questions. And Counsel Canavas, indeed, if you feel that there is something wrong in the line of questioning or the statement by the witness, you may take the opportunity to address the issues when your time is on. And indeed, a co-prosecutor may have different techniques for that. You may proceed.
So, to repeat my question, Mr. Witness, who is it that you saw meeting with military leaders, either at the train station or the Ministry of Commerce?
Response. Just now, I just stated that at the train station, military commanders from each respective battlefield, for example, the Tamok, Won, Wait, Koi, Thun, Sao Pum battlefields, these people kept coming to work with them on a regular basis, and also their commanders from divisions who came to meet at the train station. Then we relocated to the Ministry of Commerce, and at that location, cadres from each battlefield would come and go. They came to meet them, so they worked on a regular basis. They worked every day and night at the train station and at the Ministry of Commerce. When it was necessary, they had to continue working until late at night.
And was Nunchea a regular participant in these meetings?
Response. Indeed, when they met, they came all together to meet.
Was Q Sampan a regular participant in these meetings?
Response. Yes, he was. These people came to work on a regular basis, including Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, Khieu Samphan, Ieng Sary, Son Sen, who worked on a daily basis. They worked together there.
Thank you for clarifying that. Bear with me. Let me ask you specifically again about Ieng Sary. After he arrived in Phnom Penh, did he regularly participate in those meetings?
Response. Yes, he did, after he arrived from abroad. When he arrived, the most urgent matter was to organize the place adjacent to the rear of the royal palace to receive guests. And we had to think of security, provision, kitchen, catering services, and others.
During this period that the leaders were together in the train station and then the Ministry of Commerce, were they living and working together day and night? Or did they have separate places where they were going to sleep at night?
Response. What I saw was that Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, Khieu Samphan, Ieng Sary lived close to one another, except Son Sen and Tamok, Wong Wait, and Khoi Thuon, who lived separately. Sao Phum also had his own separate place to live. And for each person, they had their own forces and people to work for them respectively.
Thank you. Where did the leaders move to after the Ministry of Commerce?
Response. After that place, they moved to different locations, namely K3. Then at K3, I was not there to be part of the arrangement.
Was there a period of time where the leaders were located at the Silver Pagoda?
Response. We met there in May.
So there was were they located there for the entire month of May 1975?
Response. They met at the Silver Pagoda. Some of the leaders of the zones came to attend study sessions for about 10 days there.
And when the leaders were located at the Silver Pagoda, were you also located working there as a guard?
Response. They stayed at the Silver Pagoda, but I stayed at a house which was to the west, adjacent to that place, but to the west of the premises. It was at the house where people received guests.
Did you work during the day at the location in the Silver Pagoda where the leaders were?
Response. During the daytime, I would go there, but I was based to the west of that Silver Pagoda because I had to guard the guest house.
Now, you've indicated that in May 1975, while the leaders were at the Silver Pagoda, there was a period of 10 days where there was meetings with the zone leaders. I'd like to turn now to those meetings to ask you some questions about that. First of all, can you tell us approximately how many people in total were participating in these meetings that went on for 10 days at the Silver Pagoda in May of 1975?
Response. I did not count the number of people attending the sessions, but I noted that people from all zones coming to the sessions.
And were you present in the room where the meetings were taking place?
Response. Some days I was there, but on some days I was at the guest house.
Who was leading these meetings during the days that you were present and were able to observe them?
Answer. The people who led the meetings were mainly Pol Pot and Nuon Chea.
And based on your observations, what were the purpose of these meetings? What were the leaders doing during these 10 days?
Answer. From what I observed regarding the meetings, or the meetings at the jungle, the study session, and the meetings at that place, usually they would summarize the situation, stating that Phnom Penh was completely liberated and that we had to plan our targets. It was that we conducted or engaged in popular democratic revolution, and that was completed. And after the meeting, I saw a document which stated that now we are going to engage in socialist revolution. And the subsequent meetings talked about the socialist revolution in order to achieve the communism state. And usually they would also touch upon the situation inside and outside the country, the revolutionary life view, and the planning, the future planning that needs to be implemented.
When you say that the meetings discussed that national democratic revolution had been achieved and that you were going to proceed to socialist revolution, do you remember what matters were discussed in terms of what needed to be done to achieve socialist revolution?
Answer. I cannot recall all the details regarding the documents. However, the purpose was what I just mentioned earlier. Many of the documents discuss about the construction of the socialist revolution, about building and defending the country, about building the progressive cooperatives. But I cannot recall the details of those documents. I saw and I read those documents.
You've told us that Pol Pot and Nuon Chea led these meetings. Can you tell us, was Ieng Sary and Khieu Samphan present during these meetings?
Answer. Yes, they were present during those meetings.
And I wanted to ask you whether, about a number of subjects, whether you heard any discussion about some of these items, whether they came up during the meetings. You told us earlier today that the meeting that you were present at B5, where there was a decision made to evacuate Phnom Penh on a temporary basis for a one-week period. Was there any discussion during these meetings in May 1975 about whether the evacuation of the people from Phnom Penh should be permanent?
Answer. During the time that I was on guard, I did not hear the discussion regarding that kind of evacuation.
At any time, did you come to learn whether or not a decision was made that the evacuation of the people from Phnom Penh was to be permanent and not temporary? Were you ever informed of such a decision?
Answer. No, I did not know about that.
Do you remember whether at the May 1975 meetings there was any discussion about whether or not to circulate currency in the country?
Answer. No, I did not hear about that kind of discussion.
Did you hear any discussion about what to do with pagodas and monks in the country? Was that a subject that was discussed at the May 1975 meetings?
Answer. I did not hear about that matter. There was no common matter regarding that matter. It was silent on that matter.
Do you remember whether following the 10-day meeting of the leaders at the Silver Pagoda, was there a larger meeting that took place after that was attended by cadres from throughout the country, either at the Khmer Soviet Institute or at the old sports arena? Do you recall that meeting?
Answer. I cannot recall that.
How long did you continue to work as a guard for the leaders following the meetings at the Silver Pagoda in May of 1975? How long did you continue to work as a guard for them?
Answer. Upon the arrival from abroad of Ieng Sary, guests started arriving from May. And my duty at the time was to guard and to prepare the guest house. But I mainly worked in the preparation for the guests at the guest house and not on guard.
When was it that you transitioned from being a bodyguard from the leaders to working for Ieng Sary and preparing preparations for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Do you recall when you made that transition in 1975?
Answer. Yes, I can recall that it started from May.
Do you remember when it was that the leaders moved into the K1 office?
Answer. Based on my recollection, there were many places. There were K3, and later on they moved to K1. That was in late 1975. The President, thank you, the prosecution, thank you, Mr. Witness. The time is now appropriate for a break. We sought a break and resumed at 3 p.m. Court officer, could you assist the witness in the waiting room during the break and have him returned to the courtroom at 3 p.m. Defense counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Very briefly, perhaps you've noticed that Mr. Kyusampan has been taken by some strong coughing, and he had to leave so as not to disturb this tribunal, and he is asking permission to spend the coming hour up to the end of today's hearings in the room downstairs so that he won't have to try and stop himself from coughing non-stop, and he doesn't want to disturb the work of this chamber. Thank you.
The President, yes, the chamber grants that request. Security guard then started to take the accused to the holding cell downstairs, which has been equipped with the audio-visual facility. The court is now adjourned.